Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! Beneath the gleaming surface of his laptop screen, a digital grenade exploded, obliterating any chance of a mundane day for Jacob Langston. The subject line, emblazoned in bold, red capital letters, screamed for his attention. The invitation that shattered norms. Curiously scrolling through the email, Jacob's eyes widened as he deciphered the cryptic message. It was an extravagant invitation from his company's newly appointed HR overseer, Ms. Elizabeth, detailing their much-awaited annual soiree. But this was no ordinary Christmas bash. Elizabeth's enthusiasm crackled from the screen, declaring the event's unprecedented theme, reversed reflected realms. Feeling both intrigued and his nerves tingling, Jacob pondered the implications. Usually this manifested in harmless ways, beanbag chairs in meeting rooms or impromptu Nerf gun battles. But this was different. You see this email? Kevin from the cubicle next to his rolled his chair over, coffee mug in hand. Yeah. Langston couldn't keep the hesitation from his voice. Gonna be interesting, that's for sure. Kevin grinned. My wife's already picked out a suit and mustache for me. You planning to participate? Langston shrugged. I don't know. Not really my thing. Come on, man. It's just one night of fun. Plus, I heard the CEO is judging the contest himself. Kevin's eyebrows wiggled meaningfully. Their CEO, Richard Blackwell, was known for rewarding those who embraced company culture. The office buzzed with excitement over the next few weeks. Memos about the party's location, the elegant Harrington Hotel downtown, circulated, along with reminders about the theme. Langston had nearly convinced himself to skip the whole thing when Patricia cornered him by the coffee machine. So, Langston, what are you wearing to the party? Her bright smile didn't hide the intensity in her eyes. I'm still figuring that out. He hedged, stirring creamer into his coffee. Patricia's smile faltered slightly. You know, team participation is noted in performance reviews. The implied threat wasn't even subtle. Langston had been hoping for a promotion in the coming year. I'll be there, he said, forcing a smile. Wonderful. Patricia clapped her hands together. Let me know if you need any help with your outfit. My niece is about your size, and I'm sure she has something that would work. That evening, Langston brooded in his apartment, laptop open to various costume shops online. Nothing seemed right. A cheap wig and dress felt like he wasn't trying hard enough, but anything more elaborate seemed like too much effort for something he wasn't even enthusiastic about. His phone buzzed. A text from Michelle, one of the UX designers he'd become friends with over the past year. Heard you're struggling with party prep. Want help? I've got fashion skills and zero judgment. Langston hesitated, then typed back. Is it that obvious I'm clueless? Patricia mentioned it in the women's restroom. I figured you could use a rescue. 2 days later, Michelle arrived at his apartment with what appeared to be her entire closet in garment bags and a large makeup case. This is a lot. Langston gestured at the parade of items she was bringing in. Go big or go home, Michelle grinned, sweeping her dark hair into a ponytail. Plus, you've got the build for it. Tall, lean, not too broad in the shoulders. We can work with this. She unzipped one of the garment bags to reveal a shimmering red cocktail dress. I thought this might work. The color will look good with your complexion, and it's stretchy enough to accommodate differences in our body types. Langston touched the fabric hesitantly. It was soft, expensive looking. I don't know, Michelle. Just try it on. If you hate it, we'll try something else. But trust me, this will look fantastic. She pushed the dress into his hands and pointed him toward the bathroom. Alone, Langston stared at his reflection for a long moment before slowly changing. The dress slipped over his head with a whisper of fabric, clinging to his frame in a way that was surprisingly flattering. The length hit just above his knees, and the neckline was modest enough that he didn't feel too exposed. When he emerged from the bathroom, Michelle let out a low whistle. "Damn, Langston, you look better in that than I do." "That's not true," he mumbled, but couldn't help a small smile at the compliment. "Now let's do something about those legs. Sit." She patted the chair she'd pulled into the middle of the living room. For the next hour, Michelle worked her magic. She showed him how to apply pantyhose without tearing them, how to walk in the black stiletto heels she'd brought. Start by just standing and finding your balance, and began the process of makeup application. "I'm going for elegant, not over the top," she explained as she brushed foundation over his skin. "You have great cheekbones. We're just going to enhance what's already there." The transformation continued. Michelle carefully applied eyeshadow, mascara, and a deep red lipstick that matched the dress. By the time she was finished, Langston barely recognized himself in the mirror she held up. Now for the final touch. She produced a brunette wig styled in loose curls that fell just past the shoulders. "I thought about blonde to match your natural color, but this will create more contrast with your skin tone. Plus, it'll help you feel more like you're playing a character." Once the wig was secured, Michelle stepped back to admire her work. "You need a name," she decided. "Who are you tonight?" Langston studied his reflection, taking in the complete stranger who looked back at him. The brunette curls framed a face that somehow looked softer, more delicate with the makeup. The red dress hugged curves he didn't know his body could suggest. "Camille," he said, surprising himself with how quickly the name came to him. "I think she looks like a Camille." "Perfect." Michelle nodded approvingly. "Camille it is." The night of the party arrived faster than Langston anticipated. He'd practiced walking in the heels, secretly in his apartment, and had even watched a few videos on feminine mannerisms. Still, as he parked near the Harrington Hotel, his palms were sweaty against the steering wheel. "It's just one night," he reminded himself. "A few hours, then back to normal." The hotel lobby was already filled with his coworkers, many unrecognizable in their gender-swapped attire. Kevin sported a floral dress and a blonde bob wig, while Patricia had gone all out with a tailored suit, fake mustache, and slicked-back hair. Langston, or rather Camille, took a deep breath and stepped into the room. The black stilettos clicked against the marble floor, drawing a few glances his way. Someone did a double-take, then broke into a wide smile. "Langston! Holy shit, you look amazing!" It was Derek from accounting, barely recognizable in a blue evening gown and curly auburn wig. "Thanks," Langston replied, trying to soften his voice slightly. "You look great, too." "I need to know who did your makeup. Seriously, it's flawless." Before he could respond, Michelle appeared beside them, dressed in an impressively authentic-looking tuxedo. "That would be me," she said proudly. "Though Camille, is a natural." The party continued to fill with transformed coworkers. The atmosphere was surprisingly lighthearted, with everyone complimenting each other's efforts and laughing at the novelty of the situation. Langston found himself relaxing as the initial awkwardness faded. The red cocktail dress, which had felt so foreign at first, began to feel comfortable. The heels, while still challenging, no longer seemed impossible to navigate. When he caught glimpses of himself in the mirrored columns throughout the ballroom, he was struck by how complete the transformation was.
May I have this dance?
A deep voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Richard Blackwell, the CEO, dressed in his normal attire, apparently exempt from the theme. Sure, Langston managed, allowing himself to be led to the dance floor.
You've really embraced the spirit of the event,
Richard commented as they moved to the music.
Not everyone has. Some just threw on a wig or a suit and called it a day. But you committed.
Thank you, sir. The praise, unexpected as it was, felt good. What's your name tonight? I'm assuming you've chosen something to go with the look.
Camille,
Langston replied, the name feeling more natural on his lips the second time. Well, Camille, you've certainly made an impression. Richard's eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled.
I appreciate employees who aren't afraid to step outside their comfort zone.
As the dance ended, Richard was called away by another executive, leaving Langston with a strange sense of accomplishment. Throughout the evening, more colleagues approached him, most amazed by his transformation, some asking for makeup tips he couldn't actually provide. You're the hit of the party, Michelle told him later, handing him a glass of champagne. Everyone's talking about how incredible you look. Langston sipped the bubbly drink, feeling a warmth that wasn't just from the alcohol. It's strange, he admitted. I was dreading this, but I'm actually enjoying myself. That's because you look fantastic and you know it, Michelle replied with a wink. Confidence is sexy regardless of what you're wearing. The evening progressed with dinner, more dancing, and an open bar that kept the atmosphere lively. Langston found himself enjoying the attention in a way he never had before. As Camille, he was more approachable, more engaging. People sought out his company, laughed at his jokes, touched his arm when they spoke to him. It was nearly midnight when Richard Blackwell returned to the stage for the costume contest results. The room quieted as he adjusted the microphone. I have been watching all of you tonight, he began, and I've been impressed by the effort and enthusiasm you've shown. But one person stood out for their complete transformation and commitment to our theme. Langston felt Michelle squeeze his arm in anticipation. The grand prize goes to Camille! It took a moment for Langston to register that he'd won. Michelle pushed him forward as applause erupted around them. In a daze, he made his way to the stage, carefully navigating the steps in his stilettos. Richard handed him an envelope. Congratulations! A weekend getaway for two at the Mountain Ridge Resort. You've earned it with your dedication to company spirit. Thank you, Langston managed, his voice carrying across the now silent room. I wasn't expecting this at all. The best surprises come when we step outside our comfort zones, Richard replied, shaking his hand firmly. You've shown that tonight. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and photo requests. Langston found himself posing with various colleagues, all wanting to capture the memory of his award-winning transformation. By the time the party began to wind down, he was exhausted but exhilarated. Need a ride home? Michelle asked as they gathered their things. You probably shouldn't drive in those heels. That would be great, Langston admitted, though I think I'm getting better at walking in them. In the quiet of Michelle's car, Langston gazed out at the city lights, still processing the evening.
Penny for your thoughts?
Michelle glanced at him as they stopped at a red light. I'm just surprised, I guess, by how much I enjoyed tonight, by how different it felt to be her. Camille, Michelle supplied with a small smile. Yes, Camille. The name hung in the air between them, filled with possibility. You know, Michelle said carefully. There's no rule that says Camille can only exist for one night. Langston turned to look at her. What do you mean? I mean, if you enjoyed being her, there's nothing wrong with exploring that further, in private or wherever you feel comfortable. She kept her eyes on the road, giving him space to consider her words. I wouldn't even know where to start, he admitted after a long pause. Well, you already have a dress, shoes, and a wig. That's a start. She pulled up in front of his apartment building. And you have a friend who's happy to help if you want. Langston nodded slowly, thoughtful. Thanks, Michelle, for everything. Anytime, really. She reached over and squeezed his hand. Get some rest. Call me if you want to talk more about it. Inside his apartment, Langston carefully removed the wig, placing it on the stand Michelle had thoughtfully provided. The makeup took longer to remove, and by the time he'd changed back into his regular clothes, it was nearly 2 a.m. He should have been exhausted, ready to collapse into bed. Instead, he found himself standing in front of the mirror, holding the red dress up against his body once more. The weekend passed in a blur of confused thoughts and internal debates. By Monday morning, Langston had convinced himself that the whole experience had been a one-time thing, a story to laugh about years later. He arrived at the office in his usual attire, dark jeans, a blue button-down shirt, and comfortable loafers. The buzz about the party hadn't died down. Everywhere he went, colleagues were discussing the event, sharing photos, recounting moments. And everywhere, it seemed, people were talking about Camille.
There he is,
Kevin called as Langston entered the break room.
The man of the hour, or should I say, the woman.
Langston forced a smile.
Just got lucky with my costume, I guess.
Lucky? That was commitment, man. You looked incredible. Kevin lowered his voice.
Between us, my wife saw the photos and said she was jealous of how good your legs looked in that dress.
More comments followed throughout the day. Some were teasing but good-natured. Others were genuinely complimentary. In the afternoon, Richard Blackwell himself stopped by Langston's desk.
Just wanted to congratulate you again,
the CEO said.
Your willingness to go all in on company initiatives doesn't go unnoticed.
That night, alone in his apartment, Langston found himself drawn once more to the items from the party. He ran his fingers over the soft fabric of the red dress, still hanging in his closet where Michelle had left it. Before he could talk himself out of it, he changed into the dress. The wig followed, then the heels. He stood in front of the full-length mirror on his closet door, studying his reflection. Without the makeup, the illusion wasn't complete, but it was still recognizable. Still Camille. His phone buzzed with a text from Michelle.
How are you doing after all the attention today?
After a moment's hesitation, Langston took a photo of himself in the mirror and sent it to her with the caption, "Exploring some thoughts." Her response came quickly. "Want company? No pressure, just support." An hour later, they sat on his couch, Langston still dressed as Camille, now with Michelle's expert makeup application completing the look. "So," Michelle said gently, "tell me what you're thinking." Langston took a deep breath. "I don't know exactly. It's confusing, but I can't stop thinking about how it felt to be her. How different people were with me. How different I felt." "Different? How?"
"More confident. More myself, in some strange way."
He looked down at his hands. The nails now painted a deep red to match the dress.
Does that make any sense?
Perfect sense. Michelle nodded. Sometimes we discover parts of ourselves in unexpected ways. I don't know what to do with this discovery, Langston admitted. It's not like I can be Camille at work. Why not? When Langston looked up in surprise, Michelle continued. Maybe not immediately, and maybe not every day, but our company prides itself on being progressive. HR has policies for transitioning employees. Transitioning? Langston repeated the word slowly. I don't know if that's what this is. You don't have to label it right now, Michelle assured him. But you should give yourself permission to explore it further, if that's what feels right. Over the following weeks, Langston did exactly that. In the privacy of his apartment, Camille emerged more frequently. Michelle helped him build a small wardrobe of feminine clothes, taught him makeup techniques, and provided the emotional support he needed to process his evolving identity. The Mountain Ridge Resort weekend, his prize from the party, became an opportunity for Camille to exist outside the apartment for the first time. Michelle accompanied him, helping navigate the practicalities of being Camille in public. You're overthinking it, she told him as he hesitated in their cabin, dressed in a casual blue sweater and black pants, the brunette wig styled simply. Most people are too wrapped up in their own lives to scrutinize others. She was right. Their weekend passed without incident. Meals in the resort restaurant, walks along scenic trails, even a visit to the spa. Each successful interaction in public built Camille's confidence. By the time they returned to the city, Langston had made a decision. He scheduled a meeting with Patricia from HR. I wanted to talk to you about something personal, he began, sitting across from her desk. Patricia's expression was professional, but kind. Of course, that's what I'm here for. Since the Christmas party, I've been going through some changes. He chose his words carefully. I've realized that I identify more as a woman than as a man. I'm beginning a transition, and I wanted to discuss how to handle this at work. To her credit, Patricia didn't seem surprised. Thank you for sharing this with me, Langston. We have procedures in place for this exact situation. I'll guide you through every step. They spent the next hour discussing the company's policies, resources available to him, and a timeline for his workplace transition. By the end of the meeting, they had a plan. Langston would continue presenting as male at work for another month while preparations were made. Then, he would begin coming to work as Camille. One last thing, Patricia said as he was leaving. Have you chosen a name you'd like us to use?
Camille,
he replied without hesitation.
My name is Camille.
The next month was filled with preparations. Langston worked with a therapist Patricia recommended, began taking steps towards medical transition, and built a professional wardrobe for Camille with Michelle's help. He also sent emails to close colleagues, explaining his transition and requesting their support. The responses were overwhelmingly positive. Kevin stopped by his desk the day after receiving the email. Just wanted to say I think you're brave as hell, and I've got your back. Similar messages came from others, though Langston knew not everyone would be so accepting. Still, with the company's official support and his growing confidence, he felt ready for the change. On a Monday morning in early February, Camille walked into the office for the first time. She wore a tailored navy blue pantsuit with a cream blouse, her brunette hair styled in a professional bob, makeup subtle but polished. The black heels she'd chosen were lower than the stilettos from the party, more appropriate for work, but still feminine. The security guard at the front desk did a double take when she presented Langston's ID badge, then smiled warmly. We'll get you a new badge with your updated information, Ms. Reynolds. Have a good day. Patricia met her at the elevator. You look wonderful, Camille. How are you feeling? Nervous, Camille admitted. But good, right? The day proceeded better than she could have hoped. There were curious glances, of course, and a few awkward moments when colleagues used her old name before correcting themselves. But overall, the transition was smoother than expected. Richard Blackwell even stopped by her desk in the afternoon.
Camille,
He greeted her, using her name naturally. I wanted to personally welcome you and let you know that I admire your courage. Our company is better for having people who live authentically. By the end of the week, the initial strangeness had begun to fade. Colleagues adjusted to her new name and appearance. Work continued as normal, and Camille found herself settling into a rhythm that felt increasingly natural. One evening, as she was preparing to leave the office, Michelle appeared at her desk. Dinner? I want to hear how your first week went. Over pasta at their favorite Italian restaurant, Camille reflected on the journey that had brought her here. It's funny, she said, twirling spaghetti around her fork. If you had told me at last year's Christmas party that I'd be sitting here as Camille, I would have thought you were crazy. Life has a way of surprising us, Michelle replied. The question is, are you happy? Camille considered this. The past months had been challenging, filled with difficult conversations, logistical hurdles, and moments of doubt. But underneath it all was a growing sense of rightness, of finally being aligned with herself. Yes, she said simply. I'm happy. For maybe the first time, I feel like I'm living as my true self. Then that's all that matters. Michelle raised her wine glass in a toast. To Camille, and to being true to yourself. Camille clinked her glass against Michelle's, feeling a profound gratitude for the journey that had begun with an email about a Christmas party she'd never wanted to attend. Spring arrived, bringing with it new projects at work and continued evolution in Camille's personal life. She had begun hormone therapy, noting subtle changes in her appearance and emotions. Her blonde hair had grown out enough that she could style it in feminine ways, though she still occasionally wore the brunette wig when she wanted a change or needed the confidence boost of Camille's original look. One afternoon in April, Richard called her into his office. Camille smoothed her green dress nervously as she entered, wondering what the CEO wanted to discuss. Sit down, Camille. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. I've been reviewing the team assignments for the new client project. Yes, sir. I submitted my availability last week. I see that. He studied a document on his desk. Your performance reviews have been excellent this quarter. Patricia tells me you've taken on additional responsibilities in the UX coordination meetings. I've been enjoying the collaborative aspect of those meetings, Camille explained. It helps bridge the gap between the technical side and the user experience. Richard nodded thoughtfully. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. I'm promoting you to senior developer with a focus on UX integration. It comes with a substantial raise and a team of your own. Camille's eyes widened. Thank you, sir. I'm honored. You've earned it. Richard stood and extended his hand. Your transition has been inspirational, Camille. You've shown courage in your personal life and excellence in your professional one. That's exactly the kind of leadership we need. As they shook hands, Camille felt a surge of emotion. The promotion was validation of her work, yes, but also of the path she'd chosen. The company hadn't just accepted her transition. They had continued to value her contributions and recognize her potential. That night, she celebrated with Michelle and a few close colleagues at an upscale restaurant downtown. Dressed in a sleek black dress with gold accessories, her blonde hair now styled in a fashionable bob, Camille looked around the table at the friends who had supported her journey. A toast. Kevin raised his glass. To Camille, who showed us all what it means to be authentic, and who's going to be the best damn senior developer this company has ever seen. To Camille, the others echoed, glasses raised. Later, as she and Michelle shared a cab home, Camille reflected on the winding path that had led her here. It's still surreal sometimes, she admitted. To think that all of this started because I didn't want to seem unsociable at a Christmas party. Michelle squeezed her hand. Sometimes the most important journeys begin with the smallest steps. Or with a red dress and a pair of black stilettos, Camille added with a smile.
Speaking of which,
Michelle's eyes twinkled. Do you still have them?
Of course. They're special to me. They're how Camille was born.
As the cab pulled up to her apartment building, Camille felt a profound sense of peace. The journey wasn't over. There would be more challenges, more growth, more discoveries. But she was facing them as her authentic self, surrounded by people who supported her in a life that finally felt like it fit. She stepped out of the cab, the city lights illuminating her path forward. A path that had begun with a reluctant agreement to attend a party and had led to the discovery of her true self. Camille smiled at the thought, straightened her shoulders, and walked confidently toward home.
thanks for watching my girlies. Be sure to check out Patreon for more.